The day I sat down to hear my husband's will, I thought the worst was over. I never imagined I'd discover he had another wife, and a fortune he never told me about. The morning of the reading, the house felt too quiet. I moved through the rooms in a daze, touching the back of the old armchair where he used to sit, straightening the picture frames he always left crooked. The scent of his aftershave still lingered in the bathroom, sharp and clean, as if he might walk in at any moment and ask why I was up so early. We'd been married for 23 years. I thought I knew everything about him, his favorite breakfast, the way he liked his shirts folded, the stories he told at parties. I knew the sound of his laughter, the way his hand felt in mine, the way he'd squeeze my shoulder when he thought no one was looking. I knew the shape of our life together, the routines we'd built, the dreams we'd shared. But I didn't know about the secrets. After the funeral, the world moved on faster than I did. Friends brought casseroles and flowers, neighbors stopped by with cards and awkward hugs. My sister, Ruth, stayed for a week, helping me sort through the paperwork, the bills, the endless list of things that needed doing. I was grateful for her company, but I was also relieved when she left. I needed space to grieve, to remember, to try to find my footing in a world that suddenly felt unfamiliar. The will reading was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the lawyer's office downtown. I dressed carefully, black skirt, white blouse, the pearl earrings he'd given me on our 10th anniversary. I wanted to look composed, dignified, the way he would have wanted. I expected it to be simple. We didn't have much, just the house, a modest savings account, a few investments. I thought I'd hear the usual words, sign a few papers, and go home to start the next chapter of my life. But when I walked into the lawyer's office, I saw a woman sitting in the waiting room. She was about my age, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, a navy dress, and a nervous smile. She looked up when I entered, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't name. The lawyer, Mr. Harris, greeted us both, his face carefully neutral. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Evans, and you must be Mrs. Evans as well." I stared at him, the words not making sense. "I'm sorry, what?" The other woman stood, smoothing her dress. "My name is Julia Evans. I was married to Robert, too." The room spun. I gripped the back of the chair, my heart pounding. "That's not possible. I'm his wife. We were married for 23 years. Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know about you, not until now." Mr. Harris cleared his throat, shuffling the papers on his desk. "Perhaps we should sit down." We sat in silence as he read the will. My hands shook, my mind racing. I heard the words, "To my beloved wives, Anna and..." They didn't make sense. How could he have done this? How could he have lied to both of us? And then came the next shock. In addition to the house and the accounts you know about, there is a trust fund held in both your names. The sum is substantial. He slid a folder across the table. I opened it with trembling hands and saw numbers I'd never imagined, more money than I'd ever dreamed of, hidden away in an account I'd never heard of. Julia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I don't understand. He told me we were barely getting by." I stared at the papers, the truth settling over me like a cold wave. My husband had lived a double life. He'd lied to both of us. And now, in death, he'd left us to pick up the pieces. The lawyer's office felt colder than any funeral home. I sat across from Julia, my mind spinning, my hands clenched in my lap. Mr. Harris kept talking, about legalities, about next steps, about signatures and tax forms, but his words blurred together, muffled by the roar in my ears. I glanced at Julia. She looked as lost as I felt. Her eyes were red, her lips pressed into a thin line. She clutched her purse like a lifeline, her knuckles white. When the meeting ended, we walked out together, silent at first. The city felt too bright, too loud. I wanted to run, to hide, to scream, but instead I found myself turning to her. "Did you really not know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No, I swear. He told me he traveled for work. That's why he was gone so much. I thought he was just trying to provide for us." I nodded, feeling a strange kinship with this woman I'd never met. We were both victims of the same man, both left with the same questions, the same wounds. I drove home in a daze. The house felt different now, emptier, colder, as if his secrets had seeped into the walls. I wandered from room to room, touching his things, searching for answers. I found his wedding ring in the drawer by the bed, his favorite book on the nightstand, his slippers by the door. I wondered if Julia's house looked the same. That night I called my sister, Ruth. I told her everything, the second wife, the hidden fortune, the lies. She was silent for a long time. "I'm so sorry, Anna. I wish I could say something to make it better." I wiped my eyes, staring at the ceiling. "I just don't understand. How could he do this? How could he keep so much from me?" Ruth sighed. "Some people are better at hiding than we want to believe. But you're not alone. I'm here, whatever you need." The days that followed were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Mr. Harris called with more questions, more forms, more details about the trust. I learned that Robert had set up the account years ago, depositing money every month, never mentioning it to either of us. The account was in both my name and Julia's, with instructions that we were to split it evenly. I tried to focus on the practicalities, bills, groceries, the leaky faucet in the kitchen. But every time I looked at the checkbook, every time I opened the mail, I was reminded of the life I thought I knew, and the one I was left with. Julia called one evening. Her voice was shaky but determined. "I think we should meet," she said. "There's so much we don't know. Maybe if we talk, we can figure out what happened, who he really was." I hesitated, but agreed. We set a time to meet at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I would say to the woman who had shared my husband's life. I wondered if she hated me, if she blamed me, if she was as lost as I was. I wondered if we could ever find peace, or if we were doomed to live in the shadow of his lies. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. I spotted Julia at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, her eyes fixed on the window. She looked up as I approached, offering a tentative smile. I sat down, my heart pounding. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, two strangers bound by the same man, the same betrayal. Finally, Julia broke the silence. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will all be a nightmare." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Me too." We talked for hours, piecing together the fragments of our lives. She told me about their wedding, small, quiet, just a few friends. She told me about the trips he took, the stories he told, the way he always seemed to have just enough money, but never more. I told her about our life, the house, the holidays, the way he'd always insisted on handling the finances himself. As we talked, a pattern began to emerge. Robert had been careful, meticulous. He'd kept two lives running side by side, never letting one bleed into the other. He told Julia he was an only child, that his parents had passed away years ago. He told me he was an only child, too, but I'd met his parents years ago before they died. I realized then how easy it was to believe someone when you wanted to. Julia reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. "I found this in his desk," she said, sliding it across the table. "It's full of numbers, dates, names. I don't know what any of it means." I opened the notebook, scanning the pages. There were lists of deposits, withdrawals, account numbers I didn't recognize. There were names I'd never heard before, dates that didn't match anything in my memory. A chill ran down my spine. "He was hiding more than just us," I whispered. Julia nodded, her eyes wide. "What do we do?" I closed the notebook, my hands shaking. "We find out the truth, all of it." That night I sat at the kitchen table, the notebook open in front of me. I called Ruth, telling her what I'd found. "Do you think he was in trouble?" she asked, her voice low. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I have to find out. I can't live with all these questions." Ruth promised to help. She offered to call a friend who worked at the bank to see if she could make sense of the account numbers. I thanked her, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in days. The next morning, Julia called. "I found something else," she said, her voice trembling. "A key. It was taped to the back of his dresser. I think it's for a safety deposit box." My heart raced. "Where?" She gave me the name of a bank downtown. "Will you come with me?" I agreed, and we made plans to meet that afternoon. At the bank, the manager led us to a small room and handed us a box. My hands shook as I turned the key, lifting the lid. Inside were stacks of cash, passports in different names, and a letter addressed to both of us. I unfolded the letter, my eyes scanning the words. "I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you. I loved you both. I wanted to give you a better life. Please forgive me." Julia burst into tears. I sat in stunned silence, the weight of his secrets pressing down on me. We left the bank in silence, the box heavy in my arms. That night, I sat on the porch, staring at the stars, the letter in my lap. I wondered how many more secrets were waiting to be uncovered, how many more lies I'd have to face before I could finally move on. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone. Julia and I had each other now, two women bound by the same pain, the same questions, the same need for answers. And together, we would find the truth. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and sleepless nights. Julia and I met almost every day, piecing together the puzzle of Robert's life. We visited banks, called lawyers, and pored over the notebook and the documents from the safety deposit box. Each answer led to more questions. We learned that Robert had opened accounts in both our names, moving money back and forth, always just under the radar. He'd bought property in Julia's name, a small apartment in another city, one she'd never seen. He'd taken out insurance policies, set up trusts, and made investments we'd never heard of. The fortune was real, and it was bigger than either of us had imagined. But the money didn't bring comfort. If anything, it made the betrayal feel deeper. Every dollar was a reminder of the lies, the secrets, the life we'd never really shared. One afternoon, Julia and I sat in my kitchen, the table covered in papers. "I keep thinking about all the times he said he was working late," she said, her voice hollow. "All the times he missed birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. I thought he was sacrificing for us, but he was just somewhere else." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I used to wait up for him. I'd make his favorite dinner, light candles, try to make our house feel like home. He'd come in late, kiss me on the forehead, and say he was exhausted. I thought I was being a good wife. I thought I was helping him." Julia reached across the table, squeezing my hand. We both did. We sat in silence, the weight of our grief pressing down on us. The letter from the safety deposit box haunted me. I read it over and over, searching for answers, for closure, for something that would make sense of the mess he'd left behind. "I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you. I loved you both. I wanted to give you a better life. Please forgive me." How do you forgive a man who lived two lives? How do you forgive yourself for not seeing the truth? The news of Robert's double life spread quickly. Friends called, neighbors whispered, family members sent awkward messages of support. Some people were sympathetic, others judgmental. My sister Ruth was furious on my behalf, but also worried. "Don't let this destroy you, Anna," she said. "You're stronger than you think." I tried to believe her. I tried to hold on to the pieces of my life that still made sense. My morning coffee, my walks in the park, the comfort of Ruth's voice on the phone. But every time I looked at the bank statements, every time I saw Julia's name next to mine, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. One evening, Julia called me in tears. "I found a photo," she said, her voice shaking. "It's of you and Robert from years ago. He kept it in his desk." I closed my eyes, the pain sharp and fresh. "He kept a photo of me." "Yes, and there are letters to both of us. He wrote about how much he loved us, how sorry he was, how he wished things could have been different." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He wanted everything, and in the end he lost it all. Julia sniffled. So did we. That night I sat on the porch, the letter in my lap, the photo in my hand. I thought about forgiveness, about grief, about the ways we hurt the people we love. I thought about the life I'd lost and the one I still had to build. I realized then that healing wouldn't come from answers, or from money, or even from the truth. It would come from letting go of the anger, the guilt, the need to understand. It would come from choosing to move forward, one day at a time. Julia and I decided to meet with Mr. Harris, the lawyer. One more time. We needed to know what our options were, About the money, the properties, the tangled web of accounts Robert had left behind. We sat across from him, two women who had once been strangers, now bound by a secret neither of us had chosen. Mr. Harris was patient, explaining the legalities, the paperwork, the steps we'd need to take to settle the estate. "You're both entitled to half," he said. "That's what Robert wanted, but you'll have to work together." Julia and I exchanged a look. We'd come a long way in a short time, but trust was still hard. We agreed to split everything evenly, to sell the apartment, to close the accounts. It was the only way forward. After the meeting, we went for coffee. We talked about our lives, our jobs, our families, the dreams we'd put on hold for a man who'd never really belonged to either of us. We laughed, we cried, we promised to stay in touch. "I don't know what comes next," Julia said, stirring her tea, "but I know I don't want to live in the past anymore." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Me neither. The next few months were a blur of paperwork and decisions. I sold the house, moved into a small apartment closer to Ruth. I started volunteering at the library, finding comfort in the quiet order of books and the gentle company of people who didn't know my story. Julia moved, too. She found a job in another city, started over. We called each other every week, sharing updates, offering support, reminding each other that we were more than the sum of Robert's lies. The money helped, of course. It paid the bills, eased the worry, gave us both a sense of security we'd never had before. But it didn't erase the pain. It didn't fill the empty spaces he'd left behind. One afternoon, I sat with Ruth on her porch, watching the sun set over the trees. "Do you ever wish you could go back?" I asked, my voice soft. She shook her head. "No, I wish things had been different, but I don't want to go back. You're stronger now, Anna, you survived." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle in my heart. "I did I?" She squeezed my hand. "You did, and you're not alone." The news of Robert's double life faded, replaced by new gossip, new scandals, new stories. People moved on, as they always do, but the scars remained on my heart, on Julia, on the life we'd tried so hard to build. But I was still here. I was still standing. And I was determined to find my way back to myself, to my family, to a future that was finally, truly my own. Spring brought a gentle sense of renewal. I found myself drawn to the little things, planting flowers on my apartment balcony, baking bread on Sunday mornings, calling Ruth just to hear her laugh. I started to feel like myself again, or maybe someone new, someone who had survived heartbreak and come out the other side softer, but stronger. Julia and I kept in touch. We sent each other postcards from new places, shared photos of our new homes, swapped stories about the small victories and setbacks of starting over. Sometimes we talked about Robert, but more often we talked about the future, about the things we wanted to do, the people we wanted to become. I started seeing a counselor, working through the grief, the anger, the guilt. I learned to forgive, not just Robert, but myself. I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting, but about letting go, about choosing to move forward even when the past still hurt. I joined a book club, made new friends, started volunteering at a local shelter. I found joy in helping others, in listening to their stories, in realizing that everyone carries their own burdens, their own secrets, their own pain. One afternoon, I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. She hugged me tight, her eyes shining with sympathy. "I heard about everything," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I smiled, feeling a quiet strength inside me. "Thank you, but I'm okay. Really, I'm learning to be happy again." And I was. Not the old kind of happy, the kind that comes from having everything you want, but a deeper, quieter happiness. The kind that comes from surviving, from growing, from choosing hope over despair. I started writing again, journals, letters, stories for myself and for Julia. I wrote about forgiveness, about starting over, about the way love can survive even the deepest wounds. I wrote about the lessons I'd learned, about the hope I still carried in my heart. I realized that healing wasn't a destination, it was a journey. Some days the past still hurt. Some days I missed what I'd lost. But most days I felt grateful for what I'd found. my own strength, my sister's love, the quiet joy of a life rebuilt on truth. One evening, as Ruth and I sat on her porch watching the fireflies, she turned to me, her voice gentle. "Do you think you'll ever trust again?" I thought about it for a long moment, then nodded. "I think I will, but I'll trust myself first. I'll trust my instincts, my heart, my own worth." She smiled, squeezing my hand. "That's all any of us can do." I wasn't the same woman I'd been before Robert's secrets came out. I was stronger, wiser, more compassionate with myself and with the people I loved. I knew that life would never be perfect, that there would always be pain and loss and disappointment. But I also knew that I could survive, that I could rebuild, that I could find joy in the small, everyday moments. I looked around at the life I'd created. The apartment filled with light, the flowers blooming on the balcony, the laughter of friends and family, and felt a quiet sense of peace. I was still here, I was still standing, and I was ready for whatever came next. As summer arrived, I found myself letting go of more than just the past. I let go of the need to understand every detail of Robert's double life. I let go of the anger that had kept me awake at night, replaying old conversations, searching for clues I'd missed. I let go of the guilt that whispered maybe I should have seen it coming, maybe I should have asked more questions, maybe I should have been more loving, more attentive, more something. I realized that forgiveness wasn't a single moment, but 1,000 small choices. It was choosing to smile at Julia's texts, to answer Ruth's calls, to say yes to new invitations. It was choosing to believe that I deserved happiness, even after everything. Julia and I met for lunch one Saturday, halfway between our new homes. We sat outside, the sun warm on our faces, the air filled with the scent of blooming roses. We talked about our jobs, our families, the books we were reading. We talked about Robert, too, but not with bitterness. We talked about the good memories, the laughter, the ways he'd made us both feel special, before the truth unraveled it all. "I think I'm finally ready to move on," Julia said, her eyes shining. "I'm seeing someone new. He knows everything, and he still wants to be with me." I smiled, feeling a surge of happiness for her. "You deserve that, Julia. We both do." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Thank you for being my friend. I don't know what I would have done without you." I squeezed back, tears pricking my eyes. We saved each other. Back home, I started a new tradition, Sunday dinners with Ruth and a few close friends. We cooked together, shared stories, laughed until our sides hurt. I realized that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up, who listen, who love you even when you're at your lowest. I also found myself opening up to new possibilities. I went on a few dates, nothing serious, just coffee or a walk in the park. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the conversation, the laughter, the feeling of being seen as someone new. I wasn't looking for another Robert. I was looking for myself. One evening, as I walked through the neighborhood, I ran into a neighbor I'd only ever waved to before. We talked about the weather, about our gardens, about the best place to get ice cream in town. He asked if I'd like to join him for a walk the next weekend, and I said yes. It felt good to say yes. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I filled canvases with color, with hope, with the promise of new beginnings. I hung my favorite piece in the living room, a riot of gold and blue and green, and every time I looked at it, I smiled. It was proof that I could create something beautiful out of chaos. As the days grew longer, I found myself looking forward to the future, not with fear, but with hope. I knew there would still be hard days, still be moments of doubt and regret. But I also knew that I was strong, that I was brave, that I was enough, just as I was. I was still here, I was still standing, and I was ready for whatever came next. Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who keep the biggest secrets. I never imagined that the man I built my life with would leave behind not just a hidden fortune, but another wife, a whole other world I never knew. But life has a way of testing us, of showing us who we are when everything we thought we could count on falls away. If you've ever discovered a secret that changed everything, or if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up, I hope you know you're not alone. Healing isn't quick, and it isn't easy. But with time, honesty, and a little bit of grace, it is possible. Sometimes the real strength is in letting go, not just of the people who hurt you, but of the guilt and shame you never deserved to carry. Would you have forgiven him or tried to hold on to the past? Have you ever had to share your grief with someone who was supposed to be a stranger but became a friend? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, even after the deepest betrayal, you can still choose to begin again.